I stood in my own driveway at 0630 hours, still in my CUS, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, staring at a cherry red Mustang parked where my truck usually sat. The front door of my house, the house I'd been paying the mortgage on for 6 years, opened before I could even reach for my keys. But it wasn't Sarah who stepped out. A stranger in boxer shorts and my favorite Rangers t-shirt stood there scratching his chest, looking at me like I was the one who didn't belong. Behind him, Sarah appeared in a silk robe I'd never seen before, her face cycling through surprise, guilt, and something that looked almost like defiance. "Jake," she said, my name falling flat from her lips. "Yeah?" "Early." I set my back down carefully, the way I'd learned to handle explosives. Controlled, measured. Because after 3 tours in Afghanistan, I knew exactly what happened when you let your emotions detonate without a plan. "Am I?" I replied, checking my watch. Flight landed right on schedule. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I'd been expecting this moment for 2 months. And I was ready. Master Sergeant Jake Morrison, 32 years old, United States Army Corps of Engineers. For the past 14 years, I'd made my living solving problems that most people could even imagine. Defusing IEDs in Kandahar, building bridges across hostile terrain, leading teams of specialists through missions where one mistake could cost lives. The Army had taught me 3 things that served me well: attention to detail, strategic planning, and the value of reliable intelligence. Whether I was designing blast-resistant structures or training new recruits, I approached every challenge the same way: gather information, analyze the situation, develop a plan, execute with precision. My service record spoke for itself. 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and a reputation for getting things done. When other units needed someone to solve an impossible engineering problem, they called my team. When junior officers needed mentoring, their commander sent them to me. I'd never failed a mission, never left a job unfinished, never let down anyone who depended on me. Daughter T home. I thought I'd been the same kind of reliable partner. Sarah and I had married 8 years ago, right after my first deployment. She knew what she was signing up for: the long separations, the missed anniversaries, the worry that came with loving a soldier. But I tried to make it worth it. Every paycheck went into our joint account. Every leave was spent working on our house, planning our future, building the life she said she wanted. I'd installed new hardwood floors before my 2nd deployment, renovated the kitchen before my 3rd. The mortgage payments never missed a beat, even when I was 8,000 miles away dodging mortar rounds. I thought we were building something together. Apparently, I was wrong. "This is Marcus," Sarah said, her voice trying for casual, but landing somewhere around awkward. "Marcus, this is Jake." Marcus stepped forward, actually extending his hand like we were meeting at a barbecue. "Hey man, Sarah's told me all about you. Thanks for your service." I looked at his outstretched hand, then at my wife standing behind him in our doorway. "Has she?" Sarah's cheeks flushed. "Jake, we need to talk. Maybe you should come inside and into my house?" I asked. "Where Marcus here seems pretty comfortable." The conversation that followed was surreal. Sarah explained it like she was discussing a change in our Netflix subscription. She'd been lonely during my deployment. Marcus had been there for her when she needed someone. They developed feelings for each other. She thought it would be easier if I found somewhere else to stay while we figured things out. "You moved him into our house," I said, my voice steady despite the white-hot anger building in my chest. "It's not that simple," Sarah replied. "You're always gone, Jake. I can't spend my life waiting for you to come home just to leave again." Marcus nodded along like he was providing valuable input. "Look, bro, I get that this is awkward, but Sarah deserves to be happy, you know? She deserves someone who's actually here." That's when the picture crystallized. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment or an emotional affair that had gotten out of hand. This was calculated, planned. They'd moved him in, rearranged our furniture, made themselves at home in the life I'd been building and protecting. I remembered our last video call, 3 weeks into my deployment. Sarah had seemed distant, distracted. When I'd asked if everything was okay, she'd said she was just tired from her new job at the marketing firm. Now I wondered if Marcus had been sitting just off camera, waiting for me to hang up. I remembered the care package she'd stopped sending after the first month, the emails that became shorter and less frequent, the way she'd seemed relieved when I'd told her my return date had been pushed back by 2 weeks. She hadn't been missing me. She'd been hoping I'd stay away longer. "Well," I said, shouldering my duffel bag again. I appreciate you both being so direct about the situation. Sarah blinked, clearly expecting a different reaction. Yeah? You're not going to yell? Would yelling change anything? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, we didn't plan for it to happen like this. But maybe it's better that it's all out in the open now. I nodded thoughtfully. You're probably right. Better to know where everyone stands. The truth was, my mind was already working, processing information and cataloging details the way I'd been trained to do in hostile situations. Marcus's car wasn't just parked in my driveway, it had a parking pass for Sarah's office building stuck to the windshield. His mail was probably being delivered here. The way he'd answered my door suggested this wasn't a recent development, but I kept my expression neutral, my voice calm. In Afghanistan, the most dangerous moments came when everyone thought the situation was under control. This felt remarkably similar. I'll grab some things and find a hotel for tonight, I said. Give you both some space to think about what you want to happen next. Sarah actually looked relieved. That's very mature of you, Jake, mature. As if I was being a good sport about them stealing my life. I walked past them into my own house, noting changes I'd missed at first glance. New throw pillows on the couch I'd bought. Marcus's shoes lined up by the front door. A coffee mug with his name on it sitting on the kitchen counter. They'd been living together for weeks, maybe months. Which meant Sarah had been lying to me every single day while I was overseas, protecting her freedom. But if there was one thing the army had taught me, it was that the best revenge was superior planning. I checked into a Hampton Inn that night. But I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself. Instead, I did what any good intelligence officer would do. I started gathering information. My first call was to Tom Bradley, my old platoon sergeant who'd retired 2 years earlier and now worked as a private investigator in town. Tom had always been the guy you called when you needed to know something nobody wanted to tell you. Jake, heard you were coming back today. How'd it go with Sarah? That's actually why I'm calling, I said. I need some information, and I need it to be completely legal and above board. Tom was quiet for a moment. What kind of information? I explained the situation in the same clinical terms I'd use for a mission briefing. Tom listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. Give me 48 hours, he said when I finished. And Jake, I'm sorry, brother. This is rough. While Tom worked his contacts, I did some investigating of my own. I started with our joint bank account, which Sarah had always managed while I was deployed. What I found that made my jaw clench. For the past 4 months, there had been regular charges to restaurants I'd never heard of, hotel rooms in the city, purchases at men's clothing stores. My deployment pay had been funding Sarah's affair, and she'd been brazen enough to use our joint account to do it. But the real discovery came when I logged into our cell phone account. Sarah's data usage had spiked dramatically starting in January, right around the time my deployment began. But more interesting were the call logs. Hundreds of calls and texts to the same number, starting months before I'd left for Afghanistan. I ran the number through a reverse lookup service. Marcus Chen, 28 years old, employed at the same marketing firm where Sarah had started working last year. Tom called me back 2 days later with a complete picture that made my blood boil. Your wife started the affair in December, he said. 3 weeks before you deployed. Chen moved into your house in February, 2 weeks after you left. They've been telling people at work that you're separated and getting divorced. What else? Chen's got a history. This isn't his first time with a married woman. He got fired from his last job for sleeping with his supervisor's wife. Seems to be his pattern target women whose husbands are away for business or military deployments. The final piece came from an unexpected source. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stopped me as I was collecting mail that had piled up. Jake, welcome home, dear. I have to say, I was surprised when Sarah told me you two were divorcing. She told you we were divorcing? Mrs. Patterson's face fell. Oh no. Did I say something I shouldn't have? She mentioned it when that young man moved in. Said you'd agreed to let him stay while the paperwork was finalized. So Sarah hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been actively managing the narrative, making sure everyone believed I was a willing participant in the dissolution of my marriage. She turned Mainto the absent husband who'd walked away, rather than the deployed soldier who'd been cheated on. By at the end of the week, I had a complete intelligence picture. Sarah and Marcus had been planning this for months. They'd used my deployment as an opportunity to establish themselves as a couple, spend down our savings on their relationship, and position themselves to claim the moral high ground when I returned. They thought they'd played me perfectly. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I spent the next week developing what I privately called Operation Homecoming. Like any good military operation, it had multiple phases, clear objectives, and contingency plans for various scenarios. Phase 1 was intelligence gathering, which I'd already completed. Phase 2 was resource protection, making sure I didn't lose anything I wasn't willing to sacrifice. Phase 3 was tactical execution. The resource protection phase started with a call to my lawyer, David Hendricks, who'd handled our house purchase and will preparation. David had served in the Navy before law school, so he understood both military deployments and marital law. "Jake, I'm going to be direct with you," he said after I'd explained the situation. "Texas is a community property state, but adultery can affect asset division. The fact that she used marital funds to support the affair, and that she established residency with another man while you were deployed, gives us significant leverage." "What kind of leverage?" "The house is in both your names, but you've been making the mortgage payments with your military pay. Her affair partner has been living there rent-free, essentially being supported by your income. In Texas, that's called economic adultery, and judges don't look kindly on it. I also call my bank and credit card companies, removing Sarah's access to accounts that were solely in my name while leaving the joint accounts untouched for now. If she wanted to spend money on markers, she'd have to use her own income. The tactical phase required more creativity. I couldn't just throw them out. Sarah's name was on the deed, and I needed to do everything legally. But I could make their situation uncomfortable. I called my old squad leader, Mike Rodriguez, who now ran a successful moving company. "Jake, good to have you back, hermano. What can I do for you?" I explained what I needed, and Mike was immediately on board. "That's cold, brother. I like it. When do you want to do this?" "Saturday morning. 0800 hours. I also reached out to my buddy Kevin Walsh, who worked for the city's code enforcement department. "Jake, you son of a bitch. Welcome home. What's going on?" After I brought him up to speed, Kevin was quiet for a moment. "That's rough, man. But if what you're telling me is accurate about this guy's car being there for months, that might constitute an illegal secondary residence. I could come by and do a routine inspection. Make sure everything's up to code." The final element was timing. Sarah worked Tuesday through Thursday at the marketing firm, and Marcus apparently worked a flexible schedule that kept him out of the house most weekday mornings. I'd observed their patterns for a week, noting when they left, when they returned, and when they were both gone. Everything was set for the following Tuesday, but first, I had one more conversation to have. Tuesday morning at 0730 hours, I knocked on my own front door. Marcus answered, still in a bathrobe, looking annoyed at being disturbed. "What do you want, Jake?" "I want to talk to my wife." "In my house, if that's okay with you." He called for Sarah, who appeared a few minutes later looking wary. "Jake, we agreed you'd give us space." "I've been giving you space for a week," I interrupted. "Now I need to discuss some practical matters." Adult to adult. We sat in my living room, Marcus on my couch, Sarah in my chair, me standing because I preferred the tactical advantage of height. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began. "About how I'm always gone, how you deserve someone who's actually here." "You're right," Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. "You do deserve someone who prioritizes you. Someone who builds a life with you instead of leaving you alone for months at a time." Marcus nodded along like he was coaching me through an important realization. "So I've made some decisions," I continued. "First, I'm transitioning out of the army. My enlistment is up in 6 months, and I'm not re-enlisting." Sarah's eyes widened. "You're leaving the military?" "Second, I'm starting a private consulting firm. Military contractors make 3 times what active duty soldiers earn, and the contracts are mostly domestic. I'll be home every night." Now Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Third, I think we should try couples counseling. See if we can rebuild what we've lost." Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. "Jake," Sarah said carefully, "I don't think counseling is going to fix this. Too much has happened, has it? I mean, you're clearly happy with Marcus, and he seems like a good guy. Maybe we can work out an arrangement that works for everyone." Marcus leaned forward. "What kind of arrangement?" "Well, you're already living here. Sarah seems comfortable with that. Maybe we could make it official, split the mortgage 3 ways, divide up the household responsibilities. I'd essentially be your roommate." The silence that followed was deafening. "You want to live with us?" Sarah asked. "Why not?" You've already established that this is what you want. I'm just trying to be flexible. Marcus cleared his throat. Jude, that's really weird, is it? You moved into my house while I was deployed. You're sleeping in my bed, eating food I paid for, driving a car that's parked in my driveway. If anyone should feel weird about the living situation, it's probably me. Sarah's face was cycling through emotions, confusion, guilt, and growing anger. That's not. We didn't plan for this to be permanent, she said. Didn't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've made quite a few permanent decisions without consulting me. That's when my phone rang. Perfect timing. Excuse me, I said, stepping into the kitchen to answer. Hello, Mike. Yeah, they're both here. Give me 10 minutes. I returned to the living room, where Sarah and Marcus were having a heated, whispered conversation. Sorry about that, I said. Where were we? Jake, Sarah said. This isn't going to work. You can't just decide to move back in here and pretend everything is normal. You're right, I replied. Nothing about this situation is normal, which is why I think we need to make some changes. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Mike Rodriguez and 3 of his crew members, all looking professional in their moving company uniforms. Good morning, sir. We're here for the scheduled furniture removal. Sarah jumped up from the couch. What furniture removal? Well, I said, consulting my phone. It turns out that most of the furniture in this house belongs to me. I bought it. I paid for it. And I have the receipts. Since you two have decided to make your own living arrangements, I figured you'd want your own furniture too. Marcus was standing now, his face red. You can't just take all the furniture. Actually, I can. David, my lawyer, explained it to me. Anything I purchased with my individual income before or during the marriage remains my personal property. The only items that would be considered marital property are things we bought together with joint funds. Mike stepped forward with a clipboard. We have a detailed inventory here, sir. Couch, dining room table, bedroom set, television, kitchen appliances, everything on your list. There has to be some mistake, Sarah said, her voice rising. We can't just live in an empty house. You're not going to be living in a house, I replied calmly. Kevin will explain that, as if on cue. Another knock at the door. Kevin Walsh stood there in his city inspector uniform, looking official and serious. Morning, folks. I'm here about a complaint regarding illegal occupancy and potential zoning violations. Marcus stepped forward. What complaint? Kevin consulted his paperwork. We received a report that this residence may be operating as an unlicensed boarding house or rental property. According to our records, Mr. Churn here has been residing at this address for several months without being listed as a legal resident or leaseholder. I'm not renting anything, Marcus protested. Are you paying rent? No. But are you on any lease agreement for this property? No. Do you receive mail at this address? Marcus hesitated. Some. Kevin made notes on his clipboard. Sir, you're in violation of City Ordinance 14-7, which prohibits unlawful occupancy of residential properties. You have 24 hours to establish legal residency or vacate the premises. Sarah was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. You planned this. I planned to protect my interests, I replied. The same way you planned to replace me while I was serving our country. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in organized chaos. Mike's crew efficiently removed every piece of furniture I'd purchased, leaving only a few items that Sarah could prove she'd bought herself. Kevin conducted a thorough inspection, noting several code violations that would require immediate attention. By noon, Sarah and Marcus were standing in a nearly empty house, facing a citation that required Marcus to either get on a legal lease agreement or move out within 24 hours. You can't do this, Sarah said, but her voice lacked conviction. I already did it, I replied. But here's the thing, Sarah, I'm not trying to destroy your life. I'm just not going to let you destroy mine anymore. I handed her an envelope. Those are divorce papers. Very fair terms, considering the circumstances. You can keep the house if you want to take over the mortgage payments, or we can sell it and split the proceeds. Your choice. Marcus looked at Sarah, then at the empty house, then back at me. This is crazy, man. You can't just. I can. And I did. I interrupted. And Marcus, next time you decide to move in with someone's wife, make sure her husband isn't trained in strategic planning. Resolution. The immediate aftermath was everything I'd hoped for and more. Sarah and Marcus tried to make it work in the empty house for 3 days before Marcus decided he'd rather move back to his studio apartment than deal with the code enforcement issues and mortgage payments. Sarah called me on Thursday night, crying, "Jake, please, can we talk about this? Maybe we can work something out. We are working something out," I replied. "It's called a divorce." She tried several different approaches over the next few weeks: anger, bargaining, even attempting to reconcile, but I held firm. Tom's investigation had given me all the evidence I needed for the divorce proceedings, and David made sure the settlement reflected the reality of her adultery and financial deception. The house sold within a month. After paying off the mortgage and splitting the remaining equity, Sarah walked away with enough for a down payment on a small apartment. I used my portion as seed money for Morris Engineering Solutions, the consulting firm I'd been planning since Afghanistan. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a converted warehouse space that I'd renovated myself, when Tom stopped by with an update. "Thought you'd want to know," he said, settling into one of my client chairs. "Sarah and Marcus broke up last month." "Really? Turns out he's got another pattern you didn't know about. Soon as the married woman becomes available, he loses interest. He's already moved on to someone else's wife." I shook my head, but felt no satisfaction in Sarah's misfortune. "That's unfortunate." "Is it though?" Tom had a point. Sarah had made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. I'd simply made sure those consequences were properly distributed. My business was thriving. Military contractors needed engineering expertise, and my reputation for solving complex problems had followed me into civilian life. I was earning twice what I'd made in the army, working with technology that fascinated me, and sleeping in my own bed every night. More importantly, I'd learned something valuable about trust and loyalty. The people who'd stood by me during the worst period of my life, Tom, Mike, Kevin, David, were the same people celebrating my success now. Sarah, who'd promised to love me through good times and bad, had abandoned ship the moment she found a more convenient option. The military had taught me to value character over comfort, commitment over convenience. That lesson had served me well in combat, and it served me even better in civilian life. 3 months ago, I'd started dating again. Linda was a fellow veteran who ran her own accounting firm. She understood deployment schedules, military culture, and the kind of loyalty that couldn't be purchased or negotiated. "You know what I learned from all this?" I told Tom as he got ready to leave. "What's that?" "The people who truly belong in your life don't need perfect conditions to stay. They find ways to make it work, even when it's difficult. Everyone else is just passing through." Tom nodded approvingly. "Sounds like you came out ahead, brother." I did. Sarah thought she was trading up when she chose immediate gratification over long-term commitment. What she actually did was demonstrate that she was never worthy of the life I was trying to build with her. I walked Tom to the door, looking out at the parking lot where my new truck sat next to Linda's car. She was working late tonight, finishing tax returns for several veteran-owned small businesses. Besides, I added, she had no idea what she was dealing with. You don't betray someone who's trained to adapt, overcome, and accomplish the mission regardless of circumstances. That's just poor tactical planning. As Tom drove away, I thought about the past year and how dramatically everything had changed. Sarah had tried to write me out of my own life, assuming I'd accept whatever narrative she created. Marcus had assumed he could walk into another man's home and claim it as his own. They'd both learned the same lesson that insurgents in Afghanistan had learned. Underestimating a soldier's resolve is a mistake you only make once. I locked up the office and headed home to my apartment, where Linda was waiting with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. Tomorrow, we were looking at houses together, something I'd never thought I'd want to do again. But that's the difference between building a life with someone who shares your values and trying to accommodate someone who doesn't. With the right person, even the biggest challenges become manageable. With the wrong person, even perfect conditions aren't enough. Sarah had taught me that lesson the hard way, but I'd made sure she learned it too.